systems of power and oppression. But the question remains, was Medusa truly a monster, or was she a victim of a world that feared her power? Medusa's story is a reminder that myths are more than just tales of gods and heroes. They're reflections of human nature, of the injustices and triumphs we still see today. So, what do you think? Was Medusa a villain, or was she a misunderstood symbol of resilience? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a like if you found her story as fascinating as we did. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the myths and legends that continue to shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep looking beyond the surface. Imagine being one of the greatest hunters in the world, known for your unmatched speed and skill. But despite all your abilities, your destiny is determined by a simple golden apple. Let me tell you the tragic tale of Atalanta, the huntress who couldn't escape her fate. Atalanta was abandoned at birth by her father, Zeus, who didn't want a daughter. Left to die in the wilderness, she was raised by a she-bear, learning to hunt and survive. As she grew, Atalanta became a legendary warrior, her skills in hunting unmatched. But no matter how great she became, she could never escape one thing, her prophecy. A prophecy foretold that Atalanta would only marry a man who could outrun her in a race. As the years went by, many suitors came, eager to win her hand. But Atalanta, fiercely independent, defeated them all. Her speed was unbeatable, and no man could match her skill. Then came Medea, a brave hero who had heard of Atalanta's strength and beauty. Unlike the others, he didn't boast about his abilities. Instead, he came prepared with a plan. Medea, knowing Atalanta's curse, asked the goddess Aphrodite for help. She granted him 3 golden apples, which he used to distract Atalanta during their race. As Atalanta raced ahead, confident of her victory, Medea tossed the apples one by one in her path. The golden apples were so beautiful, they distracted Atalanta just enough to slow her down. In the end, Medea won the race, and Atalanta was forced to marry him, despite her reluctance to give up her independence. But the story doesn't end in happiness. Atalanta and Medea's marriage was plagued with regret. Atalanta, still driven by her need for freedom, felt trapped by the very love she couldn't escape. And in the end, Medea, whose destiny was also marked by the gods, tragically died before she could ever truly be free. Atalanta's story is a tale of love, fate, and the clash between personal destiny and desire. Despite her unmatched strength and independence, her fate was sealed by love, and her story remains a tragic reminder of how even the most powerful can be brought down by what they cannot control. If Atalanta's bittersweet story of fate and love left you in awe, subscribe for more untold Greek myths and the heroes who shaped the ancient world. Hor, the thunder god, woke up to find his greatest nightmare had come true. Mjolnir, his mighty hammer that could level mountains and control lightning itself, was gone. Without it, the thunder god was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked. The weapon that defined his very identity as protector of Asgard had vanished without a trace. But what happened next would humiliate him more than any defeat in battle. To get his hammer back, Thor would have to do something that went against every fiber of his warrior identity. You won't believe the disguise he ends up in. It all began on what should have been an ordinary morning in Asgard. Picture Thor reaching for the leather grip that had been at his side for countless centuries, his fingers closing around nothing but empty air. The spot where Mjolnir should rest felt cold and wrong, like a missing tooth that your tongue keeps finding. Thor's morning routine, as predictable as sunrise over Asgard's golden halls, shattered in that single moment of realization. The hammer forged by dwarven masters, the weapon that could summon lightning and level mountains, had vanished without so much as a whisper of sound. The initial shock hit Thor like a physical blow. His hand remained suspended in space, still reaching for what wasn't there. Then panic crept in, cold and relentless. He let out a blood-curdling roar of sheer rage, the whole palace trembling. Without Mjolnir, he was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked, stripped of the weapon that made him Asgard's primary defender. The enemies that prowled the borders of the Nine Realms knew about his mighty hammer. They counted on Thor's strength to keep them at bay. Now that strength was gone. Word spread through Asgard's halls faster than wildfire. The other gods gathered in emergency council, their faces grave as they grasped the full scope of the crisis. Odin's ravens had brought no news. The watchmen at the gates had seen nothing. Mjolnir had simply disappeared, as if it had never existed at all. The assembled gods understood what Thor's loss meant for their realm. Asgard stood vulnerable, its greatest protector reduced to a shadow of his former self. Loki stepped forward through the crowd of worried gods, his familiar, cunning smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He offered to investigate the theft using his shape-shifting abilities, volunteering to venture where other gods could not go undetected. The council accepted his proposal immediately, desperate for any lead in their search. Thor watched his brother prepare for the mission, knowing that Loki's success or failure would determine his own fate. Loki first borrowed Freya's magic feathered coat, allowing him to fly in falcon form to Jotunheim without raising alarms. Each dead end pushed Thor deeper into desperation. He imagined facing his enemies defenseless, their laughter echoing as they realized the thunder god carried no thunder. The trail finally led to the most dangerous territory of all, Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Loki strode into the council chamber with the confident gait of someone who had solved a mystery, but his expression carried an ominous weight. The giant Thrym, lord of the frost giants, had openly boasted about his theft from his massive throne of ice and stone. He had buried Mjolnir 8 leagues beneath the frozen earth of his realm, thrice deeper than any giant's hall, he claimed, placing it where even Thor's strength would be useless. Thrym had what he thought was a simple demand for the Norse gods. He wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his bride in exchange for the hammer's return. The giant had fixated on her legendary beauty and grace, convinced that possessing both Mjolnir and the goddess of love would make him the most powerful being in all the 9 realms. His arrogance knew no bounds as he described his elaborate wedding plans to Loki, speaking of golden halls and feasts that would last for weeks. Thrym believed the gods had no choice but to accept his terms. When Loki spoke to the council about Thrym's demand, the council fell silent. Freya's reaction shattered the tense quiet that followed Loki's report, causing her rage to break the Brysinger necklace, its gems scattering across the floor in glittering fragments. She declared she would rather throw herself into the deepest ocean than marry the frost giant who dared make such a demand. The gods found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They could sacrifice one of their most beloved goddesses to a giant's lust, or they could leave Thor permanently weakened and Asgard vulnerable to every enemy that prowled the borders. The council erupted in frantic debate. Some suggested launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. Others proposed trickery or negotiation, but every path led to either devastating war or humiliating surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Brisingar. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants, eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman. Welcome back, lore hunters. Tonight I'm unwrapping some myths that slip through the cracks of pop culture, tales so rich you could live in them for weeks. Let the veils fall. Old Phaon hauled passengers between Lesbos and Asia Minor in a skiff patched more than a beggar's coat. One dusk, he carried an aged woman for free when storms canceled the rich man's coin. She touched his wrist, her skin warmed like sunrise. That crone revealed herself as Aphrodite. Payment: an alabaster jar of rose-scented balm. Phaon rubbed a dab on his temples. Waves reflected a new face, jaw sharp, curls ink black. Word of the god-veined ferryman blitzed across isles. Queens queued for night voyages. Fame fed on humility until none was left. Phaon mocked old lovers, hiked his fares, painted his hull with gold leaf. Aphrodite, hearing temple incense now dedicated to Phaon instead of herself, revisited, this time as a scarred sailor claiming poverty. Rebuked, she cursed the balm to invert. Every admiring gaze would now age him a year. By next moon, the once idol looked like driftwood. He vanished, some say into the strait's whirlpool, others into a hermit cave. Poets still swear his ghostly skiff appears on starless nights. If you board, you arrive at dawn a decade older, pockets full of rose petals that rot before noon. Queen Althea of Calydon screamed through her labor as the hearth fire hissed. From the embers, a coal spat out, a single firebrand the length of a dagger. The fates appeared, scissors glinting. Lachesis measured the newborn's life against that coal. Clotho whispered, when the wood is ash, the boy is dust. Althea snatched the brand, quenched it in a silver urn, and hid it under her bed. The baby, Meleager, grew into a spear god in the training yard. None but his mother guessed why storms seemed to pause for him. Years later, Artemis loosed a boar monstrous as a siege tower to punish King Oeneus for a skipped sacrifice. Hunters from every Greek polis gathered. Meleager led, eyes bright as forge fire. Among the heroes strode Atalanta, swift, lethal, and female, an affront to the older princes. In the thicket, Atalanta's arrow struck first blood. Meleager's spear finished the beast. He offered her the pelt. Male egos erupted. Two of Meleager's uncles drew blades. Meleager defended the huntress, slaying his own kin. Word sprinted ahead of him to the palace. Althea collapsed at news her brothers lay dead by her son's hand. Grief wrestled prophecy in her chest. Shaking, she fetched the firebrand, lit a torch, and held both over the brazier. Her love warred her rage for 9 heartbeats. On the 10th, she let the wood slip. Miles away, Meleager felt his marrow ignite. He dropped mid-stride, armor ringing like a funeral bell. At the palace hearth, the brand hissed its last and fell to gray powder. Althea watched the flakes swirl, then walked into the flames herself. In Calydon, they still say, whatever a mother births, her fire can reclaim. Young Cyparissus roamed Chios with a bronze shepherd's crook taller than himself. Apollo, idling in mortal disguise, gifted the boy a tame stag crowned with ivory antlers. It followed him like sunrise follows dawn. One blistering noon, flies tormented the stag. Cyparissus, meaning only mercy, aimed his javelin to shoo them. The tip glanced off a stone, pierced soft flank. The deer collapsed, breath misting blood. Cyparissus dropped beside it, sobs carving caverns in his throat. Apollo arrived to heal, lyre weeping gold notes. But the boy refused salvation for himself. He begged, give me a grief that never dries, so I remember him forever. Clouds boiled violet, the ground drank color from his sandals upward. Where Cyparissus knelt now stands the first cypress, trunk straight as a spear of mourning, sap weeping resin tears. Greeks plant the tree in graveyards because its roots plunge only downward, never sideways, like a grief that refuses distraction. On summer nights, hunters claim the wind through cypress needles sounds like antlers brushing the sky. Athens hailed Cephalus and Procris as couple of the century. He an expert hunter, she a devotee of Artemis. As wedding gift, the goddess sent two marvels: Lalaps, a hound fated to catch any quarry, and a spear destined never to miss. One morning, Cephalus rested from the chase and sang to the breeze, calling it Nephele, sweet comfort. The dawn goddess Eos, eavesdropping, snatched him skyward, offering immortality. He pined for Procris. Eos scoffed, "She'll betray you." Suspicion slid under his skin like splintered arrow reeds. Cephalus returned in disguise, bribing servants to hint Procris had strayed. At twilight, she arrived in the woods, masked, to spy on him first. Hearing rustle, Cephalus loosed the divine spear toward the sound. It cannot miss. The mask tore away, Procris's eyes wide as shattering glass. She fell against his chest, whispering only, "The breeze, remember?" Cephalus buried her on Mount Hymettus, pinned the fatal spear beside the grave, and leashed Laiolaps there eternally. Some nights, hikers see a spectral dog chase a phantom hare in circles that never close, while a jealous wind mutters the name Nephele through the pines. Poor farmer Ligdus told his pregnant wife, if the child is female, exposure must follow. Dowries ruin paupers. Desperate Telethusa prayed to Isis. The goddess appeared, golden-winged. Bear the child, raise her as son. Baby Iphis arrived. They bound her chest, taught her spearcraft, named her heir. At 13, Iphis was betrothed to radiant Ianthe, who adored her future husband. Iphis loved her too, but carried a secret that tore her apart. Nights she begged Isis, either unmake love or unmake lie. Eve of the wedding, Iphis roamed the temple till exhaustion. At midnight, statue eyes flashed, muscle quaked under skin, voice dropped like falling figs. When dawn trumpets blew, Iphis emerged, broad-shouldered, jaw square, still wearing mother's hopes, but now truth-shaped. Ceremony erupted in double amazement. A father spared from murder, a bride gaining the groom her heart already knew, a city given a living parable that gods can edit flesh the way poets edit verse. On anniversaries, Crete's couples exchange braided veils, symbol that love may bend rules when petitioned with courage. Satyr-blooded Ampelus dazzled Dionysus, youth swagger, curls like grape tendrils. He rode a bull through vineyards, boasting he was braver than the god. Dionysus, half teasing, half testing, sent a gadfly. The bull bucked. Ampelus flew, spine meeting earth with a wet crack. Thunderclouds curdled purple. Grief-stricken, the god plucked the corpse's heartbeat, planted it. From ribs sprouted twisting vines, from fingers curling shoots. First grapes. He fermented their juice with tears, naming the wine Ampelosios, the taste of regret. Every toast pours a little myth, sweetness chased by sting. Drink deep and you repeat the boy's brag, but this time, hopefully, know when to dismount. On the gray docks of Anthedon, a lone fisherman named Glaucus noticed something odd. Every fish he caught leapt back into the sea after flopping across a patch of wild green herbs. His curiosity, half hunger, half science, won. He tasted one leaf. A heartbeat later, his pulse throttled like a war drum. Gills tore open on his neck. Terrified, he dove overboard and discovered he could breathe brine like air. In the midnight blue below, sea deities gathered, nereids swirling like living lace, old Phorcys with crab shell crown. They greeted the newcomer, then forced a cup of ichor on him. Drink, forget the shore. Visions blitzed his skull, shipwrecks yet to come, lovers yet to drown. Prophecy is a toxin that never metabolizes. Glaucus tried to surface, to hug his aging mother, but every wave slapped him back. Barnacles crusted over his old rowing calluses. He practiced his new craft instead, whispering tides to sailors, trading secrets for offerings of bronze and bread that sank unreachable. Legend says if you stare into rough surf and hear your own name, it's Glaucus warning you to turn home. Ignore him, and you join his choir. Another voice lost to the deep. In Attica ruled Periphas, so just that subjects built temples to him, not Zeus. Offerings piled higher than to Olympus. Flattery sharpens divine talons. Thunderhead over the palace. As lightning coiled to strike, Apollo intervened. Spare the righteous, punish the praise. Zeus relented, halfway. Before the court's eyes, Periphas's flesh rippled into plumage, arms broadened into storm-breaker wings. His queen begged accompaniment, became an osprey. Throne room glittered with abandoned gold. Zeus decreed the new eagle his personal herald. Immortal, hungry for serpents of hubris. Every lightning flash, tradition holds Periphas scouts ahead, making sure no mortal altars bear the wrong name again. Arcadian huntress Callisto pledged lifelong virginity to Artemis. Oaths echo loudest in forest silence. Zeus, disguised as Artemis, tricked Callisto when her secret pregnancy showed. The real goddess burned with double fury, betrayed and impersonated. Artemis transformed the girl into a shaggy bear. Callisto's newborn, Arcus, left human. Years later, on a hunt, Arcus drew bow at the lunging bear, unaware it was his mother. Zeus intervened, flinging both into the sky as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. They circle Polaris forever, never touching, an eternal near miss engraved in stars. Notice how each story spins one spindle. Desire collides with destiny, and form shatters. Greek myth isn't merely about gods showing off, it's about limits, and the instant you cross them, reality melts and recools into shapes that remember the crime. Which of tonight's transformations branded you hardest? Firebrand, spear, cypress, rose curse, or braided veil? Write its name in the comments, but add one line. If this myth were my life lesson, I'd finish the sentence. Best confession gets read on next episode, immortal as any Greek hero. Slap that like if you felt the heat of Meleager's log or the sea spray of Phaon's oars. Subscribe and ring the bell so the algorithm threads your name into our next tapestry. Remember, stories are sparks. Hold them too lightly and they fade. Grip them too hard and they burn. Find your balance. See you in the weave. Heroes, monsters, tragedies, you know the drill. Tonight we flip the script. Some little-known tales where wit, nerve, or kindness earn outright miracles. Glass number 1 holds a bronze serpent coiled around a sprig of green, and a boy who literally came back sweeter than honey. Knossos in Midsummer smells of rosemary, sea salt, and beeswax. While the court argued harvest taxes, young Glaucus chased a bright blue lizard past the kitchens, through a corridor stacked with amphorae of fermenting honey, and, because small boys fit where gods do not, straight down a ladder into the palace cellars. Down there, the air was syrup thick. Glaucus peered into a half-open jar, hoping to see the lizard's tail. One wobble, a slip, a splash. The honey swallowed his cry, sealed itself like amber, and the cellar went still except for the slow fizz of wild yeast. When the nurse discovered an empty playroom, Minos promised royal exiles, or worse, to anyone who failed to find his heir. Search parties raked the island. An oracle finally muttered, "He is where sweetness turns to gold, and the color-changing calf is the compass." Everyone stared blankly, except one messenger who remembered a traveling seer rumored to solve riddles the way bards solve rhyme schemes. Polyidus arrived soaked in salt spray and sarcasm. Minos thrust him in front of the palace's miracle calf, white at dawn, tawny by noon, black at dusk. The king demanded an explanation, and his son before sundown. The seer stroked his beard, watched the calf cycle its living palette, and smiled. The answer is not the hide, but the eyes, he mused. At dawn, the calf watched the white sun. At noon, bronze. At dusk, onyx night. It mirrored what it beheld. So must the prince. He is hidden where color vanishes, Polyidus concluded, and descended alone into the wine-dark storerooms. Lantern raised, he located the honey amphora, whose surface held no reflections, only silence. He cracked the seal, found Glaucus suspended in golden stillness, lips blue, limbs floating like reeds in amber. When guards hauled boy and jar to the throne room, Minos' relief curdled into fury. Resurrect him, he ordered, or you will keep him company. The seer and the honey coffin were locked inside a stone vault. Bar grinded shut. Torches flickered out. The only light came from honey's inner glow. Polyidus knelt, mind racing through every charm he knew. None could reverse 2 hours without breath. A soft hiss cut the darkness. A serpent, scales gold as harvest wheat, slipped under the door. Polyidus, fearing venom, crushed it with a wine jug. Silence returned, briefly. A second serpent slid beside its fallen mate, circled the body, vanished into a crack, and re-emerged, clutching a sprig of leaves that glimmered in emerald fire. Pressed the herb to the dead serpent's mouth. In a shiver of sinew, the creature revived. The pair slithered away, leaving the leaf behind like a lesson. Polyidus' pulse hammered. He ground the glowing plant between stone shards, smeared the paste across Glaucus' cold lips, and half praying to gods who seldom pick up, waited. A heartbeat. 2. Then the boy coughed, honey and air and the shriek of returning life. He sat up wide-eyed, asking if lunch was ready. The vault erupted in shouts. Guards dragged them to Minos, whose relief eclipsed his threats. Teach the child your art, the king commanded, and you may leave Crete with both eyes intact. For 30 days, Polyidus tutored Glaucus, reading omens in bird flight, divining storms by the smell of stone, decoding dreams as if they were parchment. Each lesson the seer delivered with growing dread. Minos could weaponize prophecy. On the final morning, he presented Glaucus with a cup of wine to seal memory. The boy drank. Polyidus leaned close, whispered a single word, and the wine turned bitter. Glaucus spat it back onto Polyidus' lips. That was the spell. Every technique, every cosmic shortcut drained from the boy's mind like sand through a broken hourglass. He would live healthy, happy, but ordinary. The gift stayed locked in Polyidus' own skull. The seer departed at sunset, pockets empty except for a few stray violet leaves, the serpent herb. Some say he planted them across the Aegean. Others insist he fed them to bees, breeding honey that glows faintly green when moonlight is thin. In mountain apiaries of rural Greece, beekeepers still search for Glaucus honey, said to cure a stopped heart if administered within 3 breaths. And every cellar apprentice learns, keep lids tight, keep ladders chained, and keep an eye out for serpents. Sometimes they carry medicines gods never meant us to find. Nymph Princess Cyrene tackles a lion preying on her father's cattle. Apollo, stalking inspiration, watches her wrestling the beast bare-handed and thinks, forget liars, that's poetry. He swoops not with roses, but a gold chariot pulled by griffins. Rule a land of your own, he says, pointing across the Mediterranean. Cyrene's answer, give me a bowstring and some good soil. She rides shotgun all the way to Libya. On sun-drenched highlands, she spears the ground. Fresh springs burst. The place becomes Cyrene, namesake queen founder. Apollo immortalizes her as a long-lived nymph. Their sons include Aristaeus, future bee guru, and Eadmon, Argonaut prophet. Centuries later, Cyrenean olive oil sells for triple price in Athens. Bottles carry a tiny embossed lion, reminder that one headlock can echo into a civilization. Morning of his birth, infant Hermes crawls out of cradle, spies a tortoise, hollows the shell, strings cow gut. Voila, the first lyre. Same afternoon, he rustles 50 of Apollo's divine cattle, walking them backward to confuse hoof prints. Apollo tracks the tune of an unfamiliar instrument to a cave and catches, not a rustler, a giggling baby. Hermes begins to play. The melody melts Apollo's fury like wax. The sun god trades the entire herd plus the golden staff of herdsmen for the lyre. Contract signed before Hermes can crawl again. Apollo becomes patron of music. Hermes gains official portfolio of travelers, traders, and, ironically, thieves. Every time a guitarist hands a riff to a bandmate for mutual gain, they reenact that cave-side barter. Enslaved courtesan Rhodopis toils in a Nile Delta villa. Her only treasure, a rose-hued slipper dating to her free childhood. She washes linens in the river, humming Ionian lullabies. While drying on the bank, one slipper is whisked by a sacred falcon, messenger of Horus, who drops it into Pharaoh Psamatechus's lap during court. Kings love omens. He declares he will marry the owner. Decree echoes across gnomes. Every woman must try the slipper. Noble women sulk. The shoe fits none until desert winds guide inspectors to Rhodopis scrubbing floors. The leather hugs her heel like destiny. Pharaoh weds the astonished Greek. At festivals, Rhodopis releases doves in thanks, tying our dove myth into hers, while storytellers across the Mediterranean seed the earliest Cinderella variant. Tyrrhenian pirates spy a pretty youth on an island. Clueless, it's Dionysus in vacation mode. They abduct him, plotting ransom. Helmsman Acoetes senses trouble but is overruled. Ropes fall off as ivy coils up masts. Sweet wine floods planks. Panthers materialize, purring menace. Pirates jump ship in panic. Instead of vengeance, Dionysus transforms them into dolphins so they can atone by guiding sailors. Acoetes receives priesthood and a lifetime ticket to every Bacchic festival. Mediterranean fishermen still toss libations overboard for the merry sailors, believing every dolphin escort is a pirate making cosmic amends. On a Boeotian hillside, twin princes Amphion and Zethus debate destiny. Zethus flexes farm boy muscle, shouting, "Stone walls rise by calloused hands." Amphion replies by tuning a 7-string lyre, a gift Apollo slipped into his cradle. They inherit a dream, rebuild ruined Thebes. Zethus drives oxen and hefts limestone, but progress is glacial. At sundown, Amphion plucks a chord so pure nightingales freeze mid-song. Blocks quiver, lift and float into place. Each note a crane, each chord a pulley. Workers drop their levers and just watch. The wall grows faster than dawn's shadow. Jealous masons challenge him to raise the Cyclopean gate alone. Amphion smiles, strums a rugged minor scale. Boulders lumber across the valley like obedient elephants. Zethus, not to be outdone, times hammer blows to his brother's rhythm. For one glorious hour, hard labor becomes rock ballet. When the ramparts close, citizens cheer both sinew and song. Legends claim every stronghold thereafter leaves a lyre motif somewhere in its masonry, a secret tip of the hat to the prince who taught stones to dance. Modern acoustic engineers still reference the Amphion effect when vibration solves heavy lift problems. Princess Evadne hides an affair with Apollo. During labor, a blaze of violet light floods the barn. Baby Eamus arrives enveloped in wild violets. Fearful, she places him on the riverbank, trusting fate. Weeks later, shepherds follow a bizarre